This election will, of course, resonate and have consequences for the rest of the world, depending on who wins. Can you tell us what potential concerns each candidate carries when it comes to the global stage?
Well, we've seen a radically different approach to the world. And for that, I want to bring in Leo Michel from the Atlantic Council, formerly who's worked at U.S. Defense Secretary's office, has worked for NATO. Thanks for being with us here on France 24.
It's a pleasure to be here.
The question put to us is about these two radically world views. The United States, for all the talk of decline, still remains the world's predominant superpower. How radical is the choice when it comes to foreign policy?
I think it's pretty significant. In the area where I've spent most of my professional career, and mostly in the Department of Defense, I've worked a lot on issues concerning the former Soviet Union and Russia in the area of arms control. And then the last 15 years or so really focusing on our defense relationship with Europe. And the difference could not be more clear.
And part of that is not the fault of the United States. Is we have with the all-out invasion of Ukraine by Vladimir Putin, a return to this East versus West dichotomy. Has the West forgotten that language of deterrence, and have these candidates, are they aware of how to speak to the rest of the world?
I think Vice President Harris is, and I've seen this in not only in speeches but in comments that she's made in interviews and so forth, where it's not so pre-planned. And she's coming at this from a position where she was not apparently a major influence on President Biden's foreign policy, but he had such a long CV, if you will, of experience dealing with European defense issues, and in particular NATO. That would have been difficult to match. But still, I think that she's someone who appreciates and understands the value, the importance of the alliance, and this is not a gift to Europeans. It's
how different is she from him?
From Biden?
Yes.
I think it's a question of how long have her associations taken place. And Biden really has an amazing personal network that he could have. He spent the last couple of years of the Obama administration doing a lot of specific work on Ukraine, encouraging them to fight corruption, to strengthen our democracy, and sometimes in some rough language. He was very, very active, very knowledgeable about the Balkans as well. And these are areas where you simply can't overnight kind of pick up expertise. But I'm convinced, at least from her interactions that I've seen with Europeans, her presence at the Munich Security Conference, and the way she worked even with Zelensky a couple days before the Russian invasion in February 2022 to let him know that this is for real, this is coming. Those are not jobs that you give to a second-rate person.
So you're suggesting she's got all the competence needed, but is she different from Biden?
I don't think she will be, although I will say that, for example, in the case of Ukraine, the president has been at times cautious about trying to find this right balance between supporting Ukrainian independence and territorial sovereignty and increasing the military support for them, while being careful not to be in the position where he could somehow end up having a direct U.S.-Russian military confrontation. And I understand that, but it's a difficult choice. What we don't know, and it's difficult to predict now, is whether or not Kamala Harris, if elected, will make the same balance of risk and benefit in terms of the details of her policy. But I have no doubt that she's someone who understands the long-term threat that Russia poses.
That balance that we're talking about, it just be noted, it's not just a presidential election today. There's also all kinds of issues on the ballot, including re-electing 1/3 of the Senate and the whole of the Congress. The last time they gave $50 billion for military aid to Ukraine, some saying even if Kamala Harris is elected president, that was the last check signed by Washington when it comes to Ukraine.
I doubt that, but it will depend in part on the results of the election. I don't think In fact, I'm pretty confident if reelected, Donald Trump is not going to be a strong proponent of military assistance to Ukraine. And we shouldn't forget that I believe it was June or July of 2023 at a campaign rally, he threatened fellow Republicans. He said, do not vote one penny for military assistance to Ukraine, or I will lead a primary candidate, support a primary candidate before you. And he didn't link that at all to the strategic situation in Ukraine. He linked it to his charge that the FBI and CIA were withholding embarrassing information about Hunter Biden. I mean, this is, I won't even go into the details. I'll simply recall that in 2019, the reason for his impeachment, his first of two impeachments, was that he wanted to withhold offensive or defensive military arms, Javelin missiles, from Ukraine until Zelensky, as he said in the transcript, which was made public, I want you to do a favor for me first. And that was a political favor to open an investigation of Hunter Biden.
Okay, so Trump's worldview tainted by personal grievances.
Yes.
But what about those around him? The former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has been touted as a possible defense secretary should Trump return to the White House. Are they all nativists? Are they all isolationists? Are they all for signing a deal with Putin on day one?
I don't know. Now, there are some hints in that direction. Before I go where the hints are, I would like to point out that this is unprecedented to have so many retired senior generals and diplomats, including 5 or 6 of his closest, Mr. Trump's closest defense advisors, 2 of his defense secretaries, 2 of his national security advisors, and even his chief of staff, who was himself a retired general, come out and say that Trump essentially does not understand and value alliances, and that was a major reason for their clash. So that's the past. I think there will be a strong inclination on the part of Mr. Trump, if reelected, to pick people that are not going to say no to him.
And what will that do to the United States? What will it do to the Pax Americana, the world order we've seen since World War II?
I think it increases the risk that we will be seen as a power that's in decline, preoccupied with our domestic chaos. I mean, one of the reasons that we've seen this uptick recently in Russian and apparently Iranian disinformation on the social networks is, I think, to create exactly that. And it's incredible that an American oligarch, Elon Musk, seems to be perfectly willing to lend his social network to that effort. So there's a question of American hard power that we have to face. There's been very little discussion of what should our defense budget be like in the future. How should we apportion that, the priorities? And that's a shame. But there's been virtually no discussion at all, at least from the Republican side, on what does this do for American soft power. I wonder what American soft power is going to look like if some of the domestic policies that Mr. Trump is proposing, like rounding up 10 to 15 million undocumented migrants in the United States and putting them in camps and deporting them. What's that going to look like for American democracy, for the values that we hold dear, even though if we implement them imperfectly?
All right, Leo Michel, I want to thank you so much for joining us here on France.
Thank you very much.
There you have it, Charlie. The worry from somebody who is a man with a foot on both sides of the Atlantic at the midway point of voting on Election Day.
François, thanks so much for that. And